you all for your attendance today, for caring, for taking action, and for knowing that more action needs to be taken. I'm truly thrilled to be part of this conversation because as part of that introduction, you heard that I'm a registered dietitian. So because of that, innately, I'm very interested in nutrition-focused solutions to hunger. But I also work for Alltech, so I work in agriculture. I'll tell you more about that in a moment, which is at the root of many of these potential solutions. So they always say the best place to start is at the beginning. So we're going to kick off today's summit with a presentation really focused on a discussion of agriculture, the beginning of the food chain. And as the summit continues, you're going to hear from a fantastic lineup of speakers who will discuss additional approaches to more granular solutions to address domestic and international hunger issues. So as mentioned, I work for Alltech. We're actually a company with Kentucky roots. We're headquartered just down the road from University of Kentucky, but we work globally in over 120 countries to improve the health of crops, livestock, pets, and humans.
Nikki, this is Janet Mullins.
Yes.
Is your screen, do you think that you are sharing it? Because I don't see your slides yet.
I'm so sorry. Let me
That's
see
okay.
here. They should be up there. Let's try again.
It looks like it's starting. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Janet. I apologize.
You're welcome.
For
I'm
that.
sorry for interrupting.
Not at all. Please interrupt if you can't hear or you can't see the slides. I want to make sure you're getting the most out of this. Okay, so let's kick off. As I mentioned, my colleagues and I believe in agriculture. We think that it has the greatest potential to shape the future of our planet. As an industry, we're inspired by the great challenge the world has presented us to produce enough safe, nutritious food for all while caring for our animals, our land, air, and water for future generations. In this vein, we've actually taken on a new mission at our own company. We're asking others to join, regardless of their industry, company affiliation, or experience in their careers, in order to address several of the most significant issues that our planet is facing: nutrition, human and animal well-being, and the preservation of natural resources. Within that mission is, of course, a goal to end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition while promoting sustainable agriculture and therefore a sustainable food supply. Our new mission is aptly named, as you can see here, Planet of Plenty, which takes into account that natural resources may be finite, but human ingenuity is infinite. With that, in our discussion this morning, I'd like to briefly touch upon the reality of world hunger today, and then introduce you to the big picture of what the global ag industry and what international agricultural organizations are working on in order to see a world without hunger. To kick off, let's start with the facts and challenges that we're facing in the world today. I mentioned that the world has presented us with an interesting challenge. Some find it inspiring, and some of it might find it almost insurmountable: producing enough safe and nutritious food to feed our growing population. As we know, a startling portion of the world already does not have access to reliable, nutrient-rich foods. And much of today's discussion will focus on hunger and malnutrition, and of course that large and growing undernourished population experiencing malnutrition as a deficiency in intake of energy and/or nutrients. In fact, the Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that 842 million people in the world remain undernourished, with nearly 2/3 of them living in the Asia-Pacific region. And 1 in 4 children is estimated to be stunted due to malnutrition, and the 1 in 4 children is under 5 years old. But I'd like to switch gears here very briefly. Because our summit is based in the US, it's also important to recognize another form of malnutrition that may be caused by lack of access to nutritious food, which is obesity. Though this is not always the cause of obesity, the inability to acquire sufficient food may push families to buy calorie-dense, high-fat foods to prolong hunger. Many of these people are experiencing what we call the hunger-obesity paradox, meaning they're experiencing hunger and obesity together in one person or perhaps in the same household. And many of these folks experiencing the hunger-obesity paradox live in food deserts, areas that have limited access to affordable and nutritious food. Obesity due to Lack of access to nutritious foods is seen in increasing numbers, not only in the United States, but on a global scale. And the World Health Organization reports that obesity has nearly tripled worldwide since 1975. More than 1.9 billion adults are overweight, and over 650 million of those are obese. 40 million children under the age of 5 are overweight or obese. Malnutrition in every form and the impact of food insecurity on an individual can be absolutely devastating. It can cause poor health, low levels of energy, and reductions in mental functioning. Those experiencing hunger due to poverty may even be brought into greater poverty by the reduction of ability to work and learn, thus leading to even greater hunger, which can be a very vicious cycle. On a global scale, the impact of food insecurity reaches even beyond the devastation of an individual, so much so that the UN warns that the world must produce 60% more food by 2050 to avoid mass unrest, political turmoil, civil war, and terrorism. Population growth coupled with the higher caloric intake of increasingly wealthy people is likely to drastically increase food demand over the coming decades. And shockingly, the world is losing around 25 to 33% of the food it produces due to food waste, simple food waste, which equates to nearly 4 billion tons of food. And to achieve zero hunger by the year 2030, it's estimated we'll need an additional $267 billion per year on average for investment in both rural and urban areas and in social protection, so that all people have access to food and the ability to improve their livelihoods. I'm going to pause there for a moment because that's a lot to take in. And after that list of peril, I may have left you all feeling, just like you see on the screen, that we are doomed. What can we possibly do that's big enough to make an impact on this huge global issue, to not even just reduce hunger, but to absolutely end it so we have zero hunger? But well, it sounded like I was forecasting inevitable doom and peril. Every day, there are people and industries across the globe working towards a world of abundance, including all of you with this summit today. And global agriculture is one of them. Agriculture, farmers, and producers, no matter how big or small, have always fed people. They will continue to do so, but they must do so in a new way, with new purpose, but not just to feed people, but to feed everyone and to feed everyone well. In combination with human ingenuity from people like the attendees of this summit, new innovations, improved business models, and farm management practices will help us move towards a world of abundance. Let's take a peek at some strategies that are being implemented across the globe. The task of mitigating global food insecurity certainly is absolutely massive, and the Food and Agriculture Organization has outlined their top 9 issues that need to be tackled to truly achieve global food security, which you can see listed on the slide here. Within this, there is a need to implement and scale up interventions aimed at guaranteeing safe access to nutritious foods, framing it as a human right, with priority given to the most vulnerable. Policies must pay special attention to food security and nutrition for children under 5, children, and adolescent girls and women in order to halt the intergenerational cycle of malnutrition. A shift is needed towards nutrition-sensitive agriculture and food systems that provide safe and high-quality food, promoting healthy diets for all. In connection, the member states of the United Nations have adopted the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, their global objectives expected to guide the actions of the international community through 2030. You can see the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, here on the slide. I encourage you to look closely. You'll notice many of them are interconnected. And excitingly, since announcing our Planet of Plenty mission in May 2019, Alltech has committed to the UN Global Compact and adopted 9 of their Sustainable Development Goals, including number 2, zero hunger, because we are absolutely passionate about the impact that agriculture can have in this space. The SDGs are essentially a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. At its heart, these SDGs are an urgent call for action by all countries, developing and developed, in a global partnership. They recognize that ending hunger, poverty, and other deprivations must go hand in hand with strategies that improve health, education, gender equality, and spur economic development, all while tackling change and working to preserve our oceans and forests. As we endeavor to feed a growing planet, the Sustainable Development Goals have outlined key indicators that you can see here on the slide that must be measured to help us achieve this goal. Many of these focus on agriculture. You can see among the list is, of course, severity of food insecurity, which goes back to prioritizing those vulnerable populations, a focus on increasing productivity and income of small-scale food producers, and improving agricultural sustainability, including conservation of plant and animal genetic resources and evaluation of risk status of livestock breeds. There's also a call for public investment in agriculture and monitoring food price volatility to increase affordability of food. If you've paid attention to nothing else in this presentation and you choose to tune me out for the rest of it, I ask you to pay attention to this one slide. It's probably my least flashy slide in the entire presentation, but it is my absolute favorite. And I'll tell you why. It's because when we look at agriculture's impact on food security, I often think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And for those of you who are students on the call, you may have recently taken a class in psychology, and this might look familiar to you. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is actually a motivational theory in psychology, where needs lower down in the hierarchy must be satisfied before we can attend to the needs higher up on the pyramid. So in the case of agriculture, you can see here, the very base of our needs is food security, simply having enough food to feed the population. Once we produce enough food to feed the population, we can then truly focus on improvement and quality and safety of that food. Third to those needs is adding value to our food, or creating functional foods by increasing the nutrient content of animal diets to increase the nutrients that are expressed in the meat, milk, and eggs that they produce, as well as increasing the nutrient content of crops by direct application of nutrients to these crops or increasing the nutrient content of soil. And finally, we can bring that focus that needs to come on reduction of impact on the environment once all of these other fundamental needs are met. So how are farmers in the ag industry really working towards food security in practice? The biggest piece of this entire puzzle is producing more food with the same amount of land, and we need to maximize potential of the food produced on that land to produce enough food to feed everyone. Agriculture already occupies 40% of the world's land, but the global population expected to grow to nearly 10 billion people by 2050, and with many millions of people eating more meat as incomes rise, the ag industry will be expected to produce nearly 60% more food with the same amount of land. On average, 25% of the nutrients in animal feed are lost due to poor digestion of feedstuffs. New technologies are being developed and continue to be evolved to increase feed digestibility in animals so that less feed is actually required to feed those animals. And that can in turn reduce our reliance on ever increasing cropland and related deforestation. So how do we actually make more food with less land? This is the tricky bit. We can start by helping animals be more productive. We can enable livestock to better utilize feed so farmers' investments have a greater return. In other words, we get more milk, more meat, and more eggs to feed the population, which in turn brings more money back to the farmer to keep them in business producing more food. For example, in cattle, the best managed livestock herd diets can produce 2 to 4 times as much meat as poorly managed animal diets, owing to differences in cattle health and how well the animals digest and retain nutrients. This is similar to what happens in humans. When we eat really well, I heard there were some dietitians and dietetic students on the call today. When we eat really well, we perform better. We have better short-term and long-term health. the same holds true in animals. So improving productivity across the board could help produce more high-quality protein and meet rising animal protein demand while lessening the amount of input needed per animal and the need to then clear broad swaths of land like rainforests in countries like Brazil to make more room for more animal herds will just make our animals more productive. So you can see we wouldn't need more animals, we just need to increase the productivity of the animals we currently have. Now, producing more calories without expanding agricultural land certainly will prove to be difficult. Rising temperatures reduce crop yields, and conventional crop management can actually lead to a depletion in soil fertility and microbial diversity. But new agricultural technologies can help restore that microbial diversity and promote good soil structure to improve the uptake and utilization of nutrients, which alongside the practice of breeding higher yielding crops, could also help farmers both adapt to climate change and preserve the health of soil for future harvests. So I'd like to show you a couple of innovations in farming, and those of you who are familiar with agriculture on the call have probably heard a lot about these types of farming. This is really going to help us increase the amount of food produced globally without the need for additional land. So we're looking for more innovation. So for example, aquaponics combines conventional aquaculture, like raising aquatic animals like fish or prawns in tanks, alongside hydroponics, which is cultivating plants in water. So we can use a smaller amount of space to raise a good amount of food with different nutrient needs. You can also see here, the middle photo is vertical farming. It's the practice of growing crops in vertically stacked layers to maximize food production in a small space. We're seeing this more in urban environments, like on the top of shopping malls and apartment buildings and parking structures, where we can grow produce in a small space, utilizing the space going upwards versus outwards like we do traditionally in agriculture. Container farming is also another interesting piece of farming that's being brought to urban areas. Container farms can grow produce without soil. So each container farm can grow almost as much produce in a year as an acre of farmland. And next, I'd like to introduce you to an example of a farmer who I've had the opportunity to work closely with over the past year or so, who's producing a large amount of protein on very little land.
City boy, born and bred. Actually, I love nature. You don't have to go out to the middle of nowheresville to find this. You have to care about something.
Nikki, I don't know if you can turn the sound up, but if you can, that would be great.
Okay, let me see here.
We don't know what to do with it yet.
Did that help, Janet?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. What I'm gonna do here, and I apologize, that's not working. I'm just gonna click through here and I'll chat you through this video. Essentially what's happening here is we're seeing a video of, this is Kieran Whitaker. And Kieran is the CEO and founder of Entocycle. And for anyone who's interested after the presentation, I'd be happy to send you this video directly. But I've had the opportunity to work with Kieran over the past year, almost 2 years, in increasing protein production in a very, very small space. You could hear Kieran's accent, so you probably assumed he's from the UK, and you'd be correct. Kieran is actually from London. He grew up in London. He did not grow up on a farm or an agricultural space, but he really took a lot of interest in food production. He became very interested in our cause that we're talking about today, which is creating a world with zero hunger. Kieran decided he was going to find a way to produce as much high quality food, which he decided would be protein, as possible in the smallest space that he could think of, which is a small container actually just below London Bridge. So Kieran is actually, you can see here, I'm going to try to click through to You can see his little farming operation here. What Kieran is doing is he's actually raising black soldier flies in this space. So he has about the space of a very small studio apartment based under London Bridge, where he is growing black soldier flies using waste from restaurants. So he uses vegetables, starch, fruit. He brings all of that waste from restaurants into his operation to feed the larvae of the black soldier flies, and he's creating a very high quality protein product that can be used for food grade use. So he could put that into protein bars or shakes or a flour to bake with. Part of the video is kind of fun. We watch him eat some of the black soldier flies and the flour. But what he's doing with this is not only increasing high quality protein to go direct into the food supply, but what Kieran's next step is for his scale up operation, he is going to need a slightly larger space to do this, but he's going to make a huge impact by doing so, is creating protein to go into animal diets. Animals require protein just like humans do. And one of the easiest ways right now that we get protein into animal diets is through soy protein. But many of you might know that soy does take up quite a bit of space to grow, and soon we're going to run out of arable land to plant more soya beans. So what Kieran wants to do is raise even more protein that is suitable for livestock diets. Again, contributing to that, how do we produce more food on less land? So I apologize that video didn't work, but we'll move on to our next slide here. And before I jump into this one, there's a piece in the video I did want to point out. I think it's really important that Kieran brought up. He says in the video, you don't have to be a farmer to make food. You know, and someone coming from the ag industry, and I'm from Iowa originally, so I grew up in just kind of the heartland of farming in America. That sounds funny to say you don't need to be a farmer to make food, because that's always been our traditional mindset. But to move forward towards a world of zero hunger, we need to change that mindset. It's really important that we move forward thinking about food production differently. We need to think about that evolution of farming. How do we produce more with the food, or excuse me, with the land that we have? And that's what I'm hoping many of you on this call or part of this summit can be part of that discussion. We need more minds on this. So no matter what aspect you come from, no matter what your background is, what your expertise is, you probably have ideas on how we could produce more food with the same amount of land. Please share those ideas with me, with farmers that you know, with anyone at the College of Ag, at your respective universities. We need those ideas. We need continued innovation to produce the amount of food we need to feed that growing population. And to start closing out our discussion today, what I'd like to leave you with is that continued call for bold action. Just as I asked, we need bold actions, both large and small. And you can make changes not only in your own life, but at work and in your community by supporting farmers and making sustainable food choices, supporting good nutrition for all, which I know you're all doing already, and maybe even most importantly, fighting food waste. I think this will be a big part of the discussion as the summit goes on, but focusing on fighting food waste is going to be a big piece of this puzzle. And all of you will have this opportunity to discuss this further, but also use your power as a consumer and a voter, demanding that businesses and governments make changes and choices that will make zero hunger a reality. All of us at this summit are united with at least one common goal, and that goal is the same one we're working towards with Planet of Plenty, a world without hunger. If we continue to collaborate, we can achieve food security and improve nutrition while promoting sustainable agriculture and a sustainable food supply, securing a better future for everyone. Thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate the patience with some issues with Zoom, but I really, truly look forward to continuing the conversation throughout the summit and seeing how each and every one of you contributes to seeing a world without hunger. Thank you again.